Greetings brothers, welcome to the weekly tactics video. This week we're looking at Indirect Fire for the Blood Angels in 9th edition of 40k. If you're new here, I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and every week we put out various videos designed to help you do better with your Blood Angels in 9th edition. Thanks again to all our returning viewers, and let's get straight into this video. So we're talking about Indirect Fire. There's only a few options in 9th edition, so hopefully by the end of the video you'll know exactly what are the best options, which do the most damage, what you should probably pick, and just how you use them effectively in your army. So there are just the three options: the Whirlwind, the Thunderfire Cannon, and then the Forge World Rapier Carrier. So Whirlwind, as we know, is a bit more survivable. The rest obviously is the vehicle. It has that 12-inch move, it has 11 wounds, it has a 7 toughness. So, and it's got two weapons options. The Castellan, both weapons options are 72 inches. The Castellan is the free missile launcher that comes with it. It's heavy 2d6, so you get a decent number of shots, strength 6, no AP 1 damage. And then the Vengeance, which costs 10 points more, is going to be strength 7, minus 1, 2 damage. So half as many shots, so 2d3 with the Vengeance launcher. Now, on paper it doesn't look so bad, but we'll dive into some math hammer later and work out just exactly how much damage it'll do. Next up is our Thunderfire Cannon, and the Thunderfire Cannon is actually the cannon and the Tech Marine, so there's two separate models here, and that's why we've shown two on the War Scroll. So the Thunderfire Cannon itself actually has a 2+ BS, I guess the Tech Marine does as well, and the cannon has 6 wounds, and it's got a 60-inch range, heavy 4d3, strength 4, 0 AP, and then 1 damage, and the Tech Marine is kind of like a slightly lesser version of a regular Tech Marine, because he's called a Tech Marine Gunner, so he can't awaken vehicles, but he can obviously repair, so he could repair the Thunderfire Cannon, and he has to stay within 3 inches of the cannon at all times, or the cannon is essentially destroyed. It's worth also mentioning, if the Tech Marine is within 3 inches of the cannon, he can never be shot, and the cannon is a little bit more tanky than him, because he is tough. The cannon is toughness 6. So 2+ save, toughness 6, and obviously with the repair, the cannon might linger for a few turns. I guess, like, if we just look at the difference between those two weapons, it feels like both weapons on the Whirlwind can potentially do similar damage. You know, heavy 4d3 on the Thunderfire gives you more shots, but the fact you're straight at strength 4 is probably going to average out the fact you have less shots with the Whirlwind, but you have like strength 6 or strength 7. Now if we move on to the Rapier Cannon last, and it's a bit different in 9th edition, if you buy the Rapier Cannon off the Forge World website, you actually get the cannon and 2 guys. However, now it's the cannon and 1 guy for 9th edition rules, and it's treated as a single unit, or a single model, sorry. So basically, the stat line here is just the whole thing. So it's just basically 1 unit, toughness 5, wounds 5, 3+ save. If it dies, both the cannon and the single marine are dead. It does have Thunderfire Shells, which give it the exact same profile as the Thunderfire Cannon, and it has a non-indirect fire mode, which is heavy 4, strength 8, minus 2, 3 damage, which is a little bit like, sort of like a weaker version of a crack missile. It's not bad at all, but only 24 inches and non-indirect fire. So I guess the power of the indirect fire usually is you can deploy these things in cover, you can deploy them behind obscuring terrain, and you can use them to pick off key targets or whatever. So I guess for some reason, if your Rapier Cannon wasn't there, or if there was a position you could jump out of cover, you could potentially do a little bit more damage. And we'll get to basically survivability and damage math hammer in a little bit, but in a change to normal we're going to start about talking about strategies and tactics for all three, because I think this is what makes the difference with these units and how they stand apart. Because as you can see in the points cost, the Whirlwind's just 5 points more, and the other two are both 120 points. So, there's 2 stratagems that are related to Indirect Fire in 9th edition, and the first stratagem is the Whirlwind Suppression Fire. And basically, if you hit the enemy with a single shot, then it will ensure in both your turn and the enemy turn that they fight last, and it also prevents any overwatch or set to defend. Now, this is very strong against any sort of close combat unit, and it can really disrupt your opponent's plans. You know, if the opponent was planning on charging you in 2 places on the battlefield, for example, you can basically make him have to think that he's going to fight last for 1 CP, so it's basically half the cost. If you imagine normally you'd have to pay 2 CP to do your interrupt in close combat, now you would just pay 1 CP with the Whirlwind, and you could basically choose the more deadly model that you want to fight last is essentially what you would choose to shoot at, right? And if you were only up against an enemy that was going to potentially only make one charge in the turn, you can basically either just deny his charge, like there's almost no point he's going to charge if you feel like you can do enough damage to kill him, and even if he does decide not to charge, you'll get to charge him in your turn. So the Whirlwind Suppression Fire to me seems like a very, very powerful stratagem. It works on pretty much every single unit type, and there's nothing that can stop it. And the wording on the card means even in some cases, like where it says like your units may end up fighting last, the wording says that your units, all your eligible units, get to fight before the enemy. So this should essentially prevent the enemy ever making it that you have to fight last, whether you're charged or whether you weren't. And I'm seeing insane value, and we're going to jump into an actual map example of the Whirlwind and how effective Suppression Fire can be a little bit later in the video, so make sure you stick around for that. Now, simply making a hit roll with 2d6 shots on a 3+ or 2d3 shots on a 3+ seems fairly easy for the Whirlwind, so making that hit and getting those getting Suppression Fire off is almost a guaranteed for your 1 CP. I mean, you could combo the Whirlwind with a Land Speeder, and with a Land Speeder you can actually get +1 on your hit rolls if it can see the enemies you're shooting at and they're within 18 inches of the Land Speeder. So you can even do it on 2s if you want to go that far, but I really don't think you need to. I think it's fairly reliable. I mean, you could command CP a shot if for some unlucky reason you missed them all, but I really don't foresee that happening. Now, the second stratagem is for our Thunderfire Cannon, and it is Tremor Shells, and what it says is subtract 1 to the wound roll in this phase. However, when hitting a unit that is not Titanic and cannot fly, if a hit is made, then until the start of your next movement phase, half this unit's movement and subtract 2 from all advance and charge rolls for this unit. So, essentially, anything that doesn't fly and anything that is a Titanic, you're not going to do a lot of killing with the Thunderfire anyway, being it that it's strength 4, so imagine just you'll basically be firing with strength 3, because, not exactly, but it is -1 to your wound roll, and with that -1 to your wound roll, what it means is you'll just basically nerf their movement quite considerably. Now, in one of the tournament lists we looked at a few weeks ago, one of the competitive lists I think did really well in a tournament. I don't remember if it was a tournament winning list, but it was definitely up there. They had the Thunderfire Cannon, and I guess the strength of the Thunderfire Cannon is units that either already have low movement, for example, Deathwing or Death Guard, or units that really rely on like high maneuverability, like the Nightbringer or Repentia for sisters. If you essentially half their movement and -2 to their charges, this can really mess with those units. It's strong, I guess, and you can lock. Like if you were going to shoot this at Terminators, you're essentially giving them a 2.5-inch movement, so they're barely moving at all, less than you would normally be able to consolidate. So you could lock down units. You could do this on Dreadnoughts and stuff as well, with a 6-inch move, they're only moving 3 inches. Really lock some units down somewhere in the map, prevent them from getting into the high value places. So I feel like it's strong as well. However, I don't have any in-game examples to show you, but we will look at the Whirlwind example in a little bit. But so these are the 2 key stratagems and tactics that you can use with the indirect fire, and unfortunately right now the Rapier Cannon has no rules. So the Rapier Cannon, to me, I don't think you should pick it at all. Obviously, I think the strength of both these indirect fire weapons is these stratagems. And without the stratagems and the fact that you have a random chance potentially to shoot 4 crack missiles at closest range with the Rapier Cannon, and it's not as survivable as the other 2 either. It feels like the worst pick. But let's get into the maths and see how they stand up together against each other. Okay, so we're going to look at a bit of survivability here, and I did say that the Whirlwind is going to be your most survivable thing. Obviously, its higher toughness and its much higher wounds is going to help it. And you can see here just how it will do up against bolt rifles, power fists and plasmas. They're always going to break through it. But I guess against small arms fire, maybe other 2 damage weapons, it can take a fair amount of shots. I mean, it is a tank and it is decent. The Thunderfire Cannon, I guess with its 2+ save and its toughness 6, again, against those sort of small arms, it's going to do fine. Once you get into like 2 damage weapons, anything with multi-damage, because it just has those 4 wounds, it's going to get killed pretty quickly. And you can't shoot the Tetmarine Gunner if he is in with range of the cannon, but his stats are there as well, so you can see that too. And then finally the Rapier Cannon. It is a bit strange in that it is like a single model, and I guess it's a little bit less survivable against the small arms and a little bit more survivable against the big arms. But remember, the Tetmarine Gunner can also repair the Thunderfire Cannon if it doesn't get killed in a single turn. So the Rapier just seems like a strange choice right now. I don't see any reason to pick the Rapier Cannon for the cost. So the Whirlwind or the Thunderfire, and how you decide which one you want to take, to me almost feels like, which stratagem do you think is going to benefit your army more? So every week these videos do take a lot of time to make, and it does take just 2 seconds to hit that like button, so if you would smash it for me, it would be very much appreciated. So let's move into damage and see how each of these perform against a bunch of different targets. So every week we look at some critical targets now, and these are various targets that you're going to see on the battlefield and you're going to have to deal with. So the Whirlwind, and usually the way I do it is I'll highlight what's strongest in green, and this week it is the Whirlwind. It is the Vengeance Launcher, which is actually the most expensive here at 135 points. However, I'm not sure it's really worth the extra 10 points. The damage across the board of the Indirect Fire now is considerably reduced, right? Indirect Fire was nerfed quite a bit in 9th edition, so I don't think you should ever pick any of these options if you're looking to do damage. They really don't do damage. The Thunderfire Cannon doesn't manage or doesn't average more than a single point of damage against any of the options here. I suppose the Thunderfire Shells and the Rapier do the same. If the Rapier has non-indirect fire, then it might do some damage, but that's kind of against the whole point of this video. So then it's really just the Castellan Launcher of the Whirlwind and the Vengeance Launcher in the Whirlwind. And yeah, I mean, I think you just want to make hits. By taking the Castellan Launcher, you're going to get 2d6 hits. You're going to almost guarantee yourself a 3+ every single time, and you're going to basically be able to suppress anything on the battlefield. And like I said, the Vengeance Launcher is just not enough damage for the extra 10 points. If I have 10 points to spare in my list, I'm going to throw some Infernal Pistols on my captains, or something like that. You know, an Infernal Pistol into a squad of Sanguinary Guard or Death Company. Like, there's a lot more we can get out of 10 points than potentially 1 or even half a damage from your Whirlwind. And the Whirlwind is probably going to get killed by the enemy, because the Whirlwind's stratagem is so powerful. They can't really just accept that 5 times throughout the game some of their best close combat units are always going to have to fight last. So I'd very much imagine that either Deep Strikers or Firepower or something is going into that Whirlwind. So again, even more reason to not spend the 10 extra points and just accept the Castellan Launcher and go with that. So in summary, as I said, you never really want to take these things for damage. They don't do any damage. They're 120 points. And if we think 120 points, you could get 4 Sanguinary Guard. They could potentially get 20 attacks on the charge, all at 2 damage. They're going to do like 10 times the amount of damage of one of these things. So you're never going to want to take more than one of the Indirect Fire. So I think your choice here 100% is either the Whirlwind or the Thunderfire Cannon. And they both have they both have a great stratagem, and they both are, I want to say the Whirlwind is less situational because it can be used against all enemies, but I guess against some slow moving enemies or enemies that benefit purely from movement, then the Thunderfire is going to be very decent as well. Now, we recently had this game against the Custodes, and they have these really nasty Contemptor Dreadnoughts that do basically 4 to 6 damage, and they hit on 2s and they wound on 2s, and when these things make charges, they're generally very scary. So I was getting pushed on both flanks, as you can see here. However, in this game, my Sanguinary Guard actually were sitting with Chapter Master rerolls, and they were also sitting with the Blood Chalice. You know, but if he charges me and he hits on 2s and he wounds on 2s, he's probably going to delete, I'd say, like an average of between 4 and 6. Like, he could actually delete most of the squad. So he could potentially kill between 4 and 6 of my Sanguinary Guard with this charge. You know, that's almost 200 points, like 180 points worth of Sanguinary Guard. And for 1 CP, I can basically completely prevent that on this flank and just say like, you shall not kill my Sanguinary Guard, they'll stay at full health. Now I actually had a tough decision in this game because on the right hand side of the flank I actually had my Centurions. So I could have done the same on the other side and said, if your other Dreadnought on the other side of the map charges me, the Centurions are going to go first. But I like Sanguinary Guard a lot, and I do feel like their strength is jumping around the map, getting into combat quickly. So I decided to basically protect my Sanguinary Guard in this game, and hope that my Centurions could maybe tank up through the damage that was coming, and then maybe I can res one with my Priest. So just a very simple example of, like, you know, two really nasty Dreadnoughts coming in. Normally, if I didn't have enough CP to interrupt here, I'm essentially going to be losing two sets of units. For one CP, I can almost guarantee protection against one side of the map. And I had so much stuff on that one side of the map where that Contemptor was that I suppressed it. It gave me like a very strong foothold to go on and win that game against a very difficult six Contemptor list by the Custodies. So I mean, against a lot of our 2 damage stuff now being nerfed down to 1 damage, this was actually a really difficult game. And the Whirlwind provided value twice actually, because basically he had to use his Deep Strike to try and take out the Whirlwind, and it also suppressed a number of key targets. So I've also used this Whirlwind against Death Guard as well, you know, like a big blob of Death Guard melee coming in, potentially just be like, if they do charge in to some of our best units, our Blade Guard, our Sanguinary Guard, we're essentially going to go first. And if we have the Blood Chalice up on the right targets early in the game, this can be amazing. And like I said, I don't ever think there's a reason to take the Vengeance Launcher, just take the Castellan. It is tempting to take the Vengeance because it feels like it will do more damage, but when you actually run the numbers on paper, it's very little, and it definitely doesn't seem worth it. Now obviously if a tournament winning list is doing well with a Thunderfire, I'm not really someone that's going to complain up against that, but I think the Thunderfire is going to just be a bit more situational. But against the right opponents that are already slow or are lumbering essentially, you could have some great value out of this Thunderfire. So my conclusion is, if you don't have a Whirlwind for Blood Angels, think about getting one. I think it is a good addition to our list. It can also sit on objectives reasonably safely with its 11 wounds. It can sit in a board quadrant for like engaging all fronts. There is some other ways we can, you know, we can use it, and I guess against any army that has a lot of terrible units. For example, I played the Whirlwind against Death Guard. The Whirlwind was able to kill a decent amount of Poxwalkers, right? So against like weaker enemies, even the Castellan Launcher, just the 2d6 shots and the strength 6, doesn't matter if it's got no AP if the enemies have a really bad save. So it can do some killing in some matchups. So I hope that was interesting, and I hope you guys understand now why I'm seeing a lot of value in the Whirlwind. And if you do join us on Monday night for any of our live battles, then you will pretty much be seeing a Whirlwind in my list for the indefinite future. I think it's too good a stratagem not to pick, and probably throughout the games I'm going to be spending at least 3. If the Whirlwinds are live in 3 turns, I'd be very surprised if I'm not spending a CP every turn, just to sort of essentially say to one enemy, like, you shall not fight first. It kind of feels like it's frigging Gandalf, right? You shall not fight! Or something. I need to do that on stream every time we're going to fight. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of value there, guys. And I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, smash that like button, and we will see you very soon. We'll be back on Sunday for a live show, so come hang out as we look at army lists and discuss Blood Angels tactics. Alright, hope to see you all in the next video. By the blood are we made, brothers. Peace.